Well, hello, folks.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
So this is it.
Uh-oh. That sounds ominous.
Now this is it. There's got to be a song, and I'm not thinking of. So we're going to take today. We're taking our final turn towards that culminating project that you guys have been working on. The rest of our class meetings, as you can see, are about the final project. Next week and the week after, there's some optional conferences and encouraged conferences with me. Next week in this room, our ghost is back. Okay, so I'm setting up a doodle poll right now to to give you guys some options for meeting with me if you want to. And I've also canceled class during week 14. And I'll be available during that time. But the main purpose for that is to give you guys additional time to work together. I know you're super busy, and this might, if you're working with a partner, give you an opportunity to work with your partner. I want you guys to have an opportunity to flesh out in response to feedback that you receive via your blogs, via today with me when you meet with me. So there's that. I have created a doodle poll, but I've not populated it with options. I will do that. I originally thought that I set up a sign up thing with the idea that those who could meet would do a Google form, and then those who couldn't meet would do a doodle poll. And then my brain kind of came together while I was sitting here, and I said, well, okay. We're talking about tools. How about just one? So basically what I'll do with the doodle poll when it's ready is I'll populate with the times that I'm available. That'll include 15-minute windows during this class period next week. And so fill that out. The following week, I'll be available to meet if anybody wants to meet. And so if you're interested, text me, or not text me, well, you can text me or email me, and we can set up a time. If enough of you guys are interested in that, we'll set up a doodle poll, but we should be able to easily manage that. So today we're going to begin with the group workshop. I'm going to talk to you guys about what the final presentation should look like. I think I already told you guys that it's going to look a lot like what you did with your digital humanities project presentations. So I've laid that out on the page so we can talk about that. Who's presenting? All right. Okay. Excellent. All right. So so let me go ahead and
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by presenting?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I mean, share your project with us. You know, tell us what it is that you're working with. Ask us questions that we can help you with. I've got some suggested things that you might tell us to help us get an idea of what your project is. And,
okay, so I do want to do that, but it's not
right.
any kind of done, and it looks crazy, and I really need feedback. So I guess
that's perfect. That's where that's what today's about. I mean, okay. And thank you for being willing to share your work in progress, because it's so helpful to see it. I've got this this person I collaborate with all the time. She and I write very differently, but very similarly. Our prose gets mashed up, so we don't know whose is whose. But increasingly over the years, I've seen more and more of the mess behind her process. And she's got an MFA and a doctorate, and she's done so. She writes beautiful prose. So, you know, our ideas are sort of mashed up, but they kind of come in these lovely sentences. But over the years, I've gotten to see a little mess. Oh, I love seeing a little mess from Deborah. So it makes me feel so okay in the world. You know, it's so nice to see creative work in progress. It just makes it less mysterious and frightening. There are also some people, I'll check to see if there are others who wanted to be involved. Okay, we've got Joyce, and I already have, okay, good. Okay, so there are some that want to get some feedback from us, but they can't be here, so so we're doing that. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, we are trying to get people, other faculty, to make use of the dual modality room. They might be afraid of the ghost, I don't know, but but I'd like for us to take a picture together, and both sides, so that we can show people who are maybe interested in dual modality but don't know what it's about, because it doesn't make any sense till you see it, right? It didn't make any sense to me. I had to come to Susan's class and look at it, and then while I was watching, she had just gotten on a roll. She was just getting started. Everything went dark. Everything got knocked off. So so then I was going to come in here the next day and do this for the first time ever, and I wasn't at all intimidated about the fact that the whole thing just got zapped out just because she moved to the wrong place. And then I did it. This is the very thing. So anyway, but so let's do you mind taking a picture? Either one of you? Marie, you've been doing putting the video up. You should be in the picture. And you've been, actually we should do get everybody in. Okay, I will post these up on the class website, so you can show your family and friends. This is what I've been doing on Thursday night, sitting in the Brady Bunch window. All right, so I will be as fast as I can, because we want to spend as much time as we can workshopping. But the question may be, what is the? I mean, the midterm takes up 20% of the final grade. So what are you being graded on? So let me share that with you really quickly. It's entirely participation. It's sharing your project in process, whether that be on your blog, and also in here, and also one-on-one. The conferences with me are optional. As I said, they're optional to workshop here, but and everybody's not available to be here. But basically, I want you guys to show, there are a couple of pieces. We're talking about the rigor with which you document and share your progress through these distinct phases. The group workshop phase, which those of you guys who are participating in the group workshop today, you've prepared something to share with us, so that's done. Those of you guys who are not able to be here, then you future people a blog post that charts your progress at this point and questions that you have, because also part of this grade is you guys' help with one another through the blog. So hopefully, so your classmates will come by and give you some feedback on your blog. Set a timer for this. Don't spend tons of time giving all of your classmates tons of feedback. Spread it out. If somebody has already spoken in response to somebody's project, move on to somebody else. And then the individual conferences phase. So you'll prepare it for one audience, being the people who are in here, or in response to your blog, or and then for me, which would be a revision that responds to the feedback that your classmates have offered. And we'll talk about the nature of feedback that we should be striving for, but also what to do with that, because there's a big, broad space between taking all the feedback and responding to it specifically without thinking about it, and as though other people are, making your project, and then also not taking it into consideration. So we can talk about that range. So this is where I say, if are you clearly making use of the feedback provided, so you guys can read, so I won't say these things. Are you offering thoughtful, constructive feedback to your classmates? Did you post at least 2 kind of progress reports? And that basically just means what you guys have done. This is where I am right now. This is what it looks like. These are my notes. These are my questions. Just whatever it is, a snapshot of where you are. And so a little note to people in the future. Again, these are optional, but if you don't participate in either, the weight of the score is going to rest entirely on this blog post. So just that. But This is a generous score. It's a participation score, just like most of what you've been doing this semester up until we've gotten until we get to the final project. That's why we're doing all these pieces to lean into that. All right, scheduling midterms, I already talked about that. And then your final project. I'll be as quick about this as I can. Okay, I've created a couple of folders here. The final project, I'm not going to go over this assignment sheet again, or actually, this is what I went over last time. This has all the pieces. It's about your project, the about page, the details, some of the things that you need to have there related to DJH projects and so forth. If you want an overview of that, then you can go to last week's lecture that it begins with this, I think. Okay, so there's that, and you can look at that. And the sample website, the assignment sheet for the final project. All right. So again, it's going to be a lot like your digital humanities presentation, your presentation of another project. This is for those of you guys who chose this option 2, the prototypes thing. This is a link to the final project handout that I showed you guys and talked about several times before. So if you're doing the other option, the curation option, then and you're not sure how to adapt these to make those work, then ask me and we will we'll make that work. So what is it? Begin with that. Shoot for about 10 minutes, and you may be showing the sample website and walking us through there. It's up to you how you want to do that. Do Zotero again. So yeah. So I mean, you may decide to just use the website as the delivery system for your project. Maybe there's something else you want to show us. Maybe there's a Prezi, maybe there's a PowerPoint, whatever it is, we'll look at it. But anyway, so what is it? What is the project that you envision? And then, because we need it situated in the stuff we've been reading and talking about and looking at and sharing with one another within the wider world of digital humanities projects, what informs it? Now, we're going to have access to look at your project description where you fleshed it out in the about page, where you refer to at least four of our texts that we read as a class, and a certain number, which I've forgotten, of other source texts, and several digital humanities projects that seem to line up with what you're doing. But for the presentation, give us one, because that one will help us understand, the Berkey parlor. I'm sure you do. If you don't, then you're lucky. Here you go. Imagine that you enter a parlor. You come late. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they are engaged in a heated discussion. A discussion too heated for them to pause and tell you exactly what it's about. In fact, the discussion had already begun long before any of them got there, so that no one present is actually qualified to retrace for you all the steps that have gone before. You listen for a while until you decide that you've caught the tenor of the argument. Then you put in your oar. Someone answers, you answer him. Another comes to the defense. Another aligns himself against you to either the embarrassment or gratification of your opponent, depending upon the quality of your ally's assistance. However, the discussion is interminable. The hour grows late. You must depart. As you do depart, within the discussion still vigorously goes. So this is a metaphor for thinking about the scholarly conversation. So we started the semester in the middle of the Berkey parlor. I introduced you to some guests. You guys introduced us to other guests through your presentations of these digital humanities projects, through the rhetorical crises that we're bringing more people in the party, or they're already here. We're just introducing ourselves to one another. We're looking at who cites whom, and so again, we've got another network of friends, our social network. So when you present, we want to know who your guys are. Anybody? What is his name? Oh, he's the podcaster, Mark Morin. He always asks the comedians that he interviews, who are your guys? Yes, does it with this accent. That means basically, who are the comedians that you dig? And so that's where we know how to situate you. So quickly give us a reference so we'll know where your guys are, who you're standing next to, what circle you might be standing in. And then So just give us one thing that'll help identify you and your association. Just a quick one, because we can go. This is a trailer for us looking at your actual project. So what is your project that you propose doing that isn't already being done by digital humanities projects that are already in existence? Why is it important to have a digital humanities project in the world that does the thing that you're saying that your project will do? What sets your project apart from what's already out there? Why do we need this digital humanities project? And then finally, this can be quick and dirty. Don't spend a lot of time on this one. Name an existing digital humanities tool. That could be from doing digital humanities, the book, something that you've reviewed from that. This could be a tool that you've run across, one of the ones that somebody presented on or you presented on last week. And it also could be just sort of genre of digital humanities tool. Like if you're not finding anything that really sort of works, but you know you really want a timeline for this, or you know you really want a visualization map, that's fine too. Tell us that. And you don't have to go in this order either. These are just the elements that I want you to tell. Tell us what it is, tell us why it mattered, tell you who your guys are, and then also share with us a tool so we can kind of concretize your project a little bit, or at least know what kind of thing it's going to look like in its final iteration. Okay, so questions about that? Yeah.
So here's my question. So is these 4 prompts are what are going to create our 1,200 words? Is that where that goes?
No, I mean, yes. Your 1,200 words should come primarily, this is for your presentation that you're going to give, 10-minute presentation. So, I mean, these kinds of things will be covered in your 1,200 words, but this isn't all that's covered. This is just a 10-minute version of that, where you can show off portions of that. For what goes in the actual 1,200 words, I would refer to that, and I would also refer to the website example, the About page here, because it gives a lot of prompts and description about what to do there.
So for our presentation, is that something that we're going to screencastify again?
Actually, if you're going to be here and you're going to be here to present, those of you guys in the future who won't be able to be here, the final class meeting, to present to us live, prepare for us, if you would, a screencast that's no more than 10 minutes that does those 4 things. If you're here, then you'll, now that we know how to do it, you'll just share your screen with us and then walk us through whatever it is that you want us to see. If you want us to see your website and take us different places in that, that's great. If you want to show us a Prezi or a PowerPoint, or if you want to do a little bit of both, that's all great, as long as you do it within 10 minutes.
Okay, so to be sure that we knock out every piece of this, it's okay if we like print this and have it to the side while we're going about it.
Yeah. Whatever you need to make it smooth, to make sure you're comfortable, that you've covered what you wanted to cover, that you've covered it in the way that you want to cover it. You do that with note cards. If you do that with, an outline. If you do that with prose, whatever you need to work through all these pieces, it's totally up to you. All we need is the delivery at the end, where you tell us what the thing is and why it matters and who your guys are, and a digital humanities tool. One more thing. So you have, for your final project, you have the project itself. Which I want you guys to, everything you need is in this final project folder. Okay, so the assignment sheet and the sample web page. Okay, so you're going to submit your final project materials. That's going to be your site. If you have Ghost is back. If you have separate materials that you've prepared, like a PowerPoint or something, then if you could present those as well, so we can have access to those. Basically, this is for later, and it's also for it's for later. And for future students. The other portion of it is final reflections, and this is just a blog post. This is the place where you guys spend a little bit of time thinking back on what is it that you've learned in this class? What is it that you know about digital humanities and its relevance to your working life that you might not have known when you came in? maybe take a look at your past blogs and see if there's anything worth quoting there. The organizing principle for this is, what is your takeaway? The organizing principle for this would be the course objectives, the course description, and the course objectives. What is the digital humanities? What do we mean by the humanities? Here's the student learning objectives. Students will be able to define and describe the digital humanities. Okay, that's the point at which you can say, I don't think, or I've arrived at this definition, or I was just so frustrated with the fact that nobody could arrive at this definition, or I was really interested in the fact that nobody could arrive at that definition, but by the time we got to the post-digital humanities, they said that there were serious consequences for not having a definition that we all agreed upon. That was really moving. You can skip that question altogether, but we grappled with the definition. I discovered that I don't really care. I know it when I see it, which is really where I lie. But I also have privilege. So, I'm awareness of the key. I'm aware of the key debates, and those can be from debates in the digital humanities. It can be from the other rhetorical praxis that you brought in. You're not going to summarize the whole thing. You're just going to tell me this is not a comprehensive exam. You're just going to say, I've encountered some definitions. I think I've settled on one. Or isn't it what I learned about debates in digital humanities, what I really thought was most interesting was what I didn't know when I came in, meaningful applications, and so forth. You can work through those. But this is totally informal. Don't spend tons of time on it. I just want to know, as a self-assessment, what you got out of the class. This is the thing that we can use to measure learning objectives by you guys saying that this is what you learned. But don't spend a ton of time on it. That's just part of your final project. Spend most of it on your final project. All right, anything else? Any other questions? One final housekeeping thing. Last time you guys demoed your DH tools that you looked at the previous week, and the people who were in the future who weren't able to attend the class, we didn't get to look at them. So if you guys will take a look, there are several screencasts that are definitely they're interesting, they're good, and they're informative. All right, really quickly, the format of the group workshop is whatever is most useful to you. But if you don't have something in mind that you think will be useful to you, I do have recommendation. Tell us whatever you want to tell us about that sets up the work in progress, and then do the same thing. What is it? Maybe give us a sentence or two. What's its current project title? Because I'd also like for us to give recommendations for new project titles. That's something I do in my classes a lot. That titles can really help with the creative process, and when we push ourselves out of that box, and especially when we get somebody else to think about the key elements of our project and which is necessary to pull a useful title forward. What inspired your project? Again, this is just one way you can share with us. And where are you in the process of developing it? Are there sticking points or specific questions that you have for us? So basically, what is it? Why are you going this path? What problems are you encountering on the way? Part of the feedback that I want you guys to give should give us, look, what's your project title? Let's give you some feedback on it. Does it have all the required elements? At this point, you're not going to have, unless you're pretty close to done, all the required elements, but we should talk about making sure that all those elements are there. And then the main thing that we can spend time on is the environmental scan, because we can help expand and deepen the conversation as it's represented in the current phase in your source materials, your digital humanities projects, your assigned text. So for example, what other digital humanities projects have you encountered that you think might inform or help inspire the existing one? So we'll just throw out some other sources that the author, creator may or may not find useful, or they may already be familiar with, but let's just talk about those. And then just summarize, give them a couple of takeaways. All right, so all of that said, who wants to go first?
We do.
All right, Kate. All right, okay, do it.
That way
take
when I see all the other awesome ones, I'm not like, oh God, never mind. Tamara and I are doing ours together, and so we're sitting like right next to each other on our
Mommy.
yeah, you can't see, hold on.
Mama, see.
Okay, so Ours is the Jane Project, which we've already talked about too much, but whatever.
Mommy.
Dear Lord. Okay. So we have set up our website, or at least started setting up our website.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And
She's very excited about your project.
she's very excited, yes. Well, and I moved the thing so she can't see herself on the screen anymore, so that's very stressful. Okay, so we have, I'm hoping we have the tabs that you had on your example.
Yeah.
So we have on our homepage, we basically just did like a rhetorical crises that has like, it's the Jane Project, and it's supposed to talk about, here, color on this, explore the meaningful contributions of a spectrum of women diffused through the current cultural lens of social media, supporting analysis through historical, biographical, and bibliographical information against a timeline, which allows users to identify both the women's possible inspirations, cultural climate, and collaborative opportunities. And then we and basically just said it's for students and teachers of the humanities. I'm gonna go to the next.
Great.
They're all different Janes at the top. Right, you want to
Okay,
talk
I'm
about?
unmuted. And so we started the about page, and so this will lead into our 1,200 word essay about it. And we just said it's an interactive look at the process of women across time and culture. I was really interested in looking at. I got the idea from the Moretti's Grass, Maps, and Trees. And so I really wanted to look at how women interact with each other and what affects women's lives, specifically through the lens of social media. And so examining the timeline of the significant events in the women's lives. And so we want to analyze and explain the stereotypes and biases that are put on each of the women, as well as the impact that they made in conjunction with those factors in their lives. So the word Jane means woman, so the name is chosen as an homage and model for the gender as a whole. And so we're going to focus on how the women worked as representations of their sex as the outlook of those around them. So that's the about section.
All right, and then on the related DH projects, so my DH tool that I used last week was Wakelet, and if this will pull up, here it is. I use Wakelet as kind of a model of different projects that kind of had elements like ours. So I was able to, track those things, which is great. So we have the American Panorama project, which is that digital mapping that Tamara had presented that we really liked. We have this, there's this site called Women of Ancient History, and it has it's similar in that it presents different women and what they've done, but it's kind of weak sauce. So, and then kind of some of the information about, Jane Austen as our like example for the website. And there's Jane Goodall.
My college.
Okay, and then Tamara's going to take resources.
So far, we only have a couple of resources on the page. We definitely are using Frank Moretti's. Okay. We're definitely using Frank Moretti's Graphs, Maps, and Trees. And then Katie, if you'll scroll up or down, whichever direction. We found an interesting article by Sam Roberts and Robin Dunbar, Communicating in Social Networks. And so they did a study in 2010 about how women are affected by their networking. And of course, this was before social media networking, but they're just talking about the women you work with, the women in your lives, the family in your lives. And so how that establishes a woman's social and emotional development. And so that article is really effective and helpful to us as we're doing the Jane Project.
So this is the fun page. This is the prototype. So it has like what different pages of the
College?
of the project would look like. Or roughly. So each of these is a Prezi that's attached to the prototype, I guess, whatever. So this would be the landing page. So it's a timeline. So each of these, I'm going to show you.
I'm coloring.
I'm so excited you're coloring. So in this timeline, it would have.
Mommy, I'm coloring.
I'm so excited for you. It has different Janes, and look, I'm not great at Prezi, but this would look more like, you know, a timeline. And each of these circles would be paper dolls, or kind of look like paper dolls. We did Jane Austen as the example to show you, but so it would have the paper doll of Jane Austen along the timeline, and then it has the little pop-outs where you can pick different artifacts related to her. So it would have, like for her, if we wanted to look at Victorian clothing and culture, that could be something you clicked on. If you wanted to learn more about her, you know, her bibliography and what she's, you know, her work, then you could click on that. We also did the mapping Janes, and this is kind of based more on it would be an interactive map, a lot like Tamara's presentation when she showed us, what is it called? The digitized mapping or whatever, where it shows like the connections of who could be connected in what ways. So that's a different Prezi where, and this is where the social media would come in, where you'd be able to kind of align those women based on their social media and their social media presences and who they would like connect with in theory. So there would be different, you know, they're grouped differently, but just as the example, the UK Janes, and so it would have, you know, their different dolls, and you could click on them again to find just kind of like it is on the timeline. But this would be, you know, all the different social media aspects. And then this was just examples of kind of the paper dolls. So we did one of Jane Goodall, and then one of Jane Austen, and with their different artifacts. And then on the side I just said, when a Jane is selected from either the timeline or the map, a pop-out would show a close-up of the user's figure, and then you could pick the different adornments, which, you know, differ depending on who it is. And then I said, for example, Jane Goodall might have a camera or scientific equipment, and they could discover information about her scientific studies or some of the photos of her working with gorillas in Africa. Jane Austen, like I already said, it could be information about like her works, or it could be, you know, printing and publishing information in that era. But and then the social media presence as well.
Excellent. Okay.
This has our like some of the information that we found about them, or like kind of what we would include with them. And then I don't know where the other thing was. Oh, and then just an about us or whatever page.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so what do you guys dig about the project as it stands right now?
What do we dig?
Brian's eyes just got big.
Right.
I'm throwing my project away.
Mine looks so bad compared to this.
Works in progress.
Those five for Greg. Yeah, always.
Honest.
Thank you.
What about, I mean, we can't tile it anything else, so we won't help her with that, or you guys with that. You guys have shown us, I think, a lot of outside materials that are already influencing it. I think, especially on the resources page, your use of Moretti was really helpful. Every time that you referenced this resource was invaluable because it did such and such. I think at the next source, as as our study evaluated the social networking of a large group of women, it proved to be invaluable to the Jane Project. I think those are places where I would continue, because it's not quite clear how all the pieces fit together. One thing that might help, I think, is some kind of a conceptual argument. This is not necessary, but if you guys can fall upon it, there are a couple of things. One is why have all the Janes together through time and space? What is it that we learn by looking at these Janes? I think you guys spoke about it early on. I mean, this is like I'm thinking about a room of one's own, that, they're, Shakespeare's sister, and, there's like Jane is a stand-in for the women writer, and and also if you can think more too about the choice of paper dolls and this interchangeable, exchangeable name. And there's also a really interesting history about paper dolls and their use and their counter-cultural roles and the tensions between masculinity and femininity, and paper doll history has become intertwined with an early history of in queer studies, mainly gay men before the turn of the century. So I don't know what all that feeds into, but we also have Jane Doe. So anything else?
That's a recent horror movie too, The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Oh,
That's still like the stand-in name.
yeah. So that, I think that's important. You don't have to go into it a lot, but and I think you do share with us some of that. But I think lean in a little harder early on about why James, and then that'll help us understand the social media elements of it, and all of those interconnected pieces, and all of the different prezzies that you have, and how those all speak together. Which okay, so what's our feedback? Everybody's throwing their projects in the trash. I know you guys have amazing projects. I've heard plenty about them. Takeaway is what? Pull back? Is that what we want to tell Katie and Tamara?
Well, sort of, but not in a do less situation. But like, especially with Moretti, the sort of point of it is like the 30,000-foot view.
Mm.
So the point of it, if I've understood him correctly, and it's totally possible that I haven't, is that these projects are supposed to inform something that you can't get from reading the text. So if you're going to do timelines across, like pull back and show what the timeline could show,
Yeah.
you don't understand from just looking at a list of publication dates.
I think that's I think it's a very good point. It's a really important point. And I think it ties to what I'm suggesting, but I don't think you have to have an answer to it. I think that just suggesting that there is some kind of sticky point that we can see when we pull out to, as I like the way Brian put that. I think I am asking when you for you to talk about why the Janes. That is the beginning of the distant reading. And then, a little bit additional articulation about why the paper dolls, and not necessarily what can be learned, what you did learn by putting these maps against the timelines, but just that this is a trope, these Janes, and they're also they're women who are writers. And also, they have a lot to teach us about Janes historically, women historically, to stand in this.
Well, and that feedback is really good because, we've talked about it, she and I, but we didn't put it on any writing. That the whole concept is looking at women and what are these women doing, specifically the women that are Janes in history, whether in character or in real life. And so knowing that Jane means woman, what are these women doing that no other women had done before? And so what advancements were they making? And so that's almost one concept we wanted to do with that paper doll, is society expects women to play dress up, but yet look at Jane Goodall and look at the others who were breaking those social boundaries. And so it's almost a gender bending in a way without fully gender bending, but they were raising those societal questions of I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, and what are
Right.
we doing with it? So,
Okay.
and that's specifically with the mapping of looking at their social media. How were they affecting others around them? Who was affecting them? And so, great feedback. We can definitely take that and run with it.
And I think that you guys were going to get to it a lot. You haven't had a chance to. I mean, you just get started. Hell. but I mean, the about part. I'm sure you had planned on devoting space to these kinds of things that Tamara just articulated. And I don't know. You may give yourself some space to talk about timeline, and then you can fold in what inspirational timeline projects, and then take us back to Jane, and then maybe you have a section on maps and maps that I mean, these are already, you've already referenced those projects, and you probably already had these plans for it. So what I felt myself doing, other than saying, oh my God, it's gorgeous and I can't wait to play with it, I was also kind of trying to stick it together. So sounds like you guys already have those conversations. So carry on, my wayward son. Now get that out of your head if you're old enough to know what the hell that is.
It belongs there.
It belongs there in your head. All right, thank you guys. Thank you. All right, so who's next?
Well, who
Oh,
wants
I guess you. Great, you up, Greg?
I want to close my computer. I don't mind going next.
Thank you.
I'll give y'all plenty to critique, all right? Y'all won't have to. Okay, so I obviously do not have things put together to the extent that they do, but let me go over what I have here. So we have, so I'm really interested in Westerns, in particularly the Western novel, Western fiction novel, and I really enjoy studying and reading over like Zane Grey and his works. And one thing that that as we were going through here and talking, and I shared with you guys kind of my idea in the past, and so now I think I have some things put together for you to look at, is one thing that crossed my mind is Zane Grey during his time period was a very extensive traveler. Okay, he liked to travel a lot. And that was during a time period where people didn't get to travel, I mean, like what we do today. And so as I'm trying to piece together what does that mean? How can that translate into digital humanities? I got to thinking, as I read a lot of Zane Grey books, I travel a lot, particularly to the same areas that he wrote about. And so as I would be reading his fictional novels, he would interweave inside of his novels all these real locations that actually exist. So the image that pops up in my head is of these places that I've seen that really exist, and how awesome and beautiful and crazy they are, of the Southwest mainly. And so I and trying to piece together what I could do for a digital humanities project, I started thinking, what could I put together that is relevant, that would be helpful, and that would be something that maybe hasn't been done before. And so I thought, okay, so of the people who read today in these Zane Grey novels, more than likely have not been to the same places that Zane Grey wrote. So the images that pop up in their head are completely different. They're manufactured images of what these places might look like, instead of what they actually look like, what the author intended them to look like. And so I thought, okay, well, so they're really missing the Zane Grey's intentions. So I thought, okay, what if I created, if I took a two-dimensional map and really beefed it up and made it more of a three-dimensional map with layers in it. So I thought, okay, first of all, so if you look, let me scroll up here so you guys can see that. So I use my Google Maps and digital photos, and I'm thinking of the audio and video clips to I guess a layer inside of these maps here. And so the very first thing that I did was I ran across, and of course you see here, I say I need to make sure I cite this little project here. But again, just a working draft. So I found this little thing here that goes through, and of course, it's just a sample of it because it goes and gives all of his westerns, and then the map here shows. Again, this is just a two-dimensional map. It shows where these locations, the settings are for the map. So the settings, while the novels themselves are fictional, the setting and locations are actual places or places. So I thought, okay, step one, I located the first Western novel that he published, and then I synthesized through Google Maps to create layers for the readers to sift through. So as you can see below, there are covers of his first 3 published Western novels below, located on the map where the fictional setting was mentioned to have taken place. And then, so as I scroll up here, do you see? I've taken and I've changed up the little exclamation point, the red exclamation point that pops up, and I've replaced that with the actual novels. Okay, so this is where his first novel took place, and this is where his second novel took place, and this is where the setting third was took place. But again, still that's just two-dimensional. How can I make that where the person can interact through this and make it more layered and in three-dimensional? So if you then took your cursor and you were to settle on and click on this first one, which is Heritage of the Desert. So when you click on it, the first thing that pops up is, okay, and so as a reader, if I'm looking here and I'm actually reading Heritage of the Desert and I want to know more about it, this gives us some information where and this is all stuff that I've put in here. The year published and where it was, the year it's supposed to be, the setting, where it was supposed to be set at. And of course, is one of the places that's mentioned is Lee's Ferry in the Painted Desert. So you click on that and then you scroll through, and so here's a picture of Heritage of the Desert, and this is a picture of where Lee's Ferry is and what that looks like. So you can imagine someone, on a horseback trying to cross over there at Lee's Ferry, and what the geography looked like. Whereas otherwise, someone in their mind just has to manufacture what that is. So, so there's there's a picture of what it looked like back then during his time, or where the place, where it would have been set, and then a picture of what it looks like today, and then. Same thing. So if you look at his next book, Desert Gold, you kind of get the same information. So you click on it, and there's the picture of it, and I put 4 pictures inside of that. Scroll through and say, okay, this is what one place looks like, what another place looks like, but. For this particular one, you see where the novel itself is, where it took place, and then you see Kit Peak down there, and here's a picture of where Kit Peak is and what that looked like. And so as you're reading through a novel, you may run across some kind of location, and you can go to this site, to this map, and you can click on it, and you can find, of course, it would take a long time to build, but you could instill a picture of what that place looked like either then or today, and so the reader could have actual knowledge of what it is that he's trying to envision. And so I thought about doing that, and then I thought I'd take it a step further. If I were to actually put this whole thing together, I would take it a step further and either grab something from Audible, or some clips from Audible where you have some audio where they're actually reading what the passage about what that location is inside of the novel, or grab some kind of a movie clip. There's tons of Western movies that are made from Zane Grey, where you could put the scene in the book where they're talking about it, and then look and see, okay, what is the movie portraying what it looks like in real life, or is it completely different than what Zane Grey had mentioned whenever he wrote it? So those are that's kind of what my project is. I've got a long way to go. I think I got the gist of it, but I was looking to do the. I was really thinking about maps, grass, and trees, and some of the. I guess that's what was driving my thoughts on this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. We don't have a lot of time, but first thing is, what do we dig? I dig that we can see the time and we can see the place, and the place played such an important role, and that you're dealing with one genre and one author, and how gorgeous some of these places are. And I don't know, what other layers could we put?
I think
Greg, it looks so good.
And
I love the idea of being able to zoom into the map and see where these things were taking place. I'm a huge Louis L'Amour fan, and that's what I would love to do with Louis L'Amour. So I've never read a Zane Grey. Don't hate me.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, I've never read a Zane Grey. I've only read Louis L'Amour thanks to my dad, and I would love to be able to dive in. You were talking about you didn't know how to get the layers, and so maybe try ThingLink, and maybe that would work with Google Maps. I don't know if the two would talk well together.
So when you click on like this last one here, when you click on the novel cover, when it comes up, it pulls up and you can add layers on there. So if I were to click on one, it's kind of like the little scroll where it said, picture 1 of 4. So you can click on it again and another image will come up, and you can add in there what it looks like, what it is, where it is, and how that interrelates to the novel. So you can add the layers. I haven't had a chance to go in and add an audio or video. That's where my expertise starts running low.
Well, and you don't need to know how to do any of that. This is what we need, is this visualization. This is what layer 1 would look like. This is what layer 2 would look like. This is what layer 3 would look like. This is why we need these layers. These are the kinds of projects that sort of inspired it. But we have nothing for this. This is why Zane Grey is a useful vehicle for this kind of visualization tool. And Zane Grey's name is so great, so his name has to be in the title. I don't know, Matt, what do you have?
Greg mentioned talking about a representation of what it looked like then, and maybe potentially what it looks like now. I think if he included that, for sure, that's where you could draw something about the genre. Especially Moretti always talks about how long Westerns are around. People aren't writing Westerns anymore, and you might be able to imply an argument as to why by showing what the Wild West used to look like and what it looks like now. If it's changed enough, I don't know enough if these settings are different, but if they are, you can imply that this is why maybe the genre is different.
Good idea.
Well, I love it. Okay, good stuff. Hey, she loves it too.
Yes.
Mapping Zane Grey, layering, it says no, because that's not enough. Visualizing Zane Grey, I don't know. You guys think about it. Anything else? All right. Environmental scan. I think we've seen several really interesting models. I think Moretti is a great contextualizer for this, because this is a definite distant read. At the same time, it's something that enables a close reading, so we can also draw from some of our other pieces that suggest that duality is important. And yeah, okay, excellent. Who's next? Thanks. Yay. Good stuff. How about one of you guys?
Mine's in the very raw, basic form right now.
You guys quit apologizing for yourselves.
I just have one Google slide, or not Google slide, but All right, so I don't have any screenshots, but I'll show you the project that does something like I want to do. So for my project, I would be focusing on the play by Brian Friel called The Loves of Cass McGuire. And this is a play that I talked about in a conference last semester. The purpose of this digital humanities project would be to contrast major historical events in Ireland between the years, and I said 1912, but maybe going back to the Irish famine, probably, to 1967. And the reason why is because the main character in the play, she was born probably the end of the 1800s, so her family and parents and grandparents would know about the Irish famine and have those experiences. And contrast that with American pop culture between those same years. The main character in the play, Cass McGuire, left Ireland and was an immigrant in America for 50 years. She returns to Ireland, but often goes into her past, describing her time in America. Her family and those who meet her in Ireland pretty much describe her as American. They're like, oh, that American woman. They no longer really see her as Irish, or they're more like a kind of hybrid or American because she's been there so long. By contrasting these two, one sees, I think, the immigrant Cass's disassociation with Ireland in a way. And I think this will perhaps let people see what it's like for an immigrant leaving and then returning to Ireland, and how her world is completely changed by both. My project would add to the discussion of immigration and issues of cultural identity. The character in the play almost experiences culture shock when returning to her country. The Ireland she left was fraught with fighting, poverty, colonialism, and uprisings. When she returns, Ireland is a free, independent country, and she discovers that her family was independent economically and did not need her support. While she's away working in New York, working in a cafe, she sends money back home to her family, thinking that she's supporting them and helping them out. But she finds out that, you know, the money she sent to them during her time working in America was put back for her. So, and she almost kind of has a breakdown, wondering, well, what was I working all this time for, you know? So my project would function similarly to the Re-envisioning Japan project. And I'll show you that here in a minute, in that I would have a timeline at the bottom of the screen that would bring up historical events in Ireland and contrasting them with American pop culture. And this contrast would be between serious events and lighthearted entertainment, for example, like Abbott and Costello. And the reason why is because the main character, when she's confronted with these serious issues of family and Irish culture, she starts talking about Irish or American pop culture. Things like Abbott and Costello, The Ed Sullivan Show, Mae West, Anna Mae Wong, things that were popular during that time period. And so I'll show a visual where everything would appear on the screen. So let me go to the Re-envisioning project. So the Re-envisioning Japan project, they have a timeline, a running timeline at the bottom of the screen. If you see, it's like goes back to 1879, but some of them you don't really see a lot of videos, and you can move the timeline, and they'll have like pictures during that time period, videos that you can watch. Let me see, the bombing of Pearl Harbor with the description of that historical period. So you could watch that clip and kind of get an idea of, you know, what was going on during that time period. And so I imagine my project being similar in a way, but let me go to my PowerPoint. Like I said, it's very basic, but I was inspired by what you showed us about the Donald Duck and Glenn Beck and everything going on at one time. But I envision in the middle of my page or screen or project, the text of this play in the middle, and you could scroll through it. And at the bottom, or I'm not sure if I'd have it on the bottom or the side, a timeline where like on the top you would have all these Irish events, and on the maybe the bottom the American pop cultural references. So you could click on them, maybe watch a video of Abbott and Costello when she mentions it, or a clip from Mae West or the Keystone Cops, and like she'll quote like, you know, drop in and see me sometime, which is come up and see me sometime, a misquote of that character. And I would, when you click on the spaces at the bottom, it would pull up a video like in the Re-envisioning Japan, or it would bring up a photo or something, and then over here, like with that Glenn Beck and Donald Duck, there would be some information either from some a source like Wikipedia or something that would give you more information about that time period. And some of the events, that I would highlight would be like the Easter Rising of 1916, because this character leaves in 1917, the year after, the War of Irish Independence of 1919, Bloody Sunday 1920, Irish Independence of 1921. And I would have some maybe travelogue videos as well, like 1930s Ireland travelogue, or which is titled "Come Back to Erin," and just so you get a perspective of what it's like, what she left behind, what life was like, and then when she returns, what it's like, and just kind of that compare and contrast between two cultures, and this disassociation.
Yeah.
And I'm open to feedback, because that's kind of what I'm thinking of, but I'm not sure if that works well, or what you guys think of that, or if you have any suggestions.
Well, first, what do we dig?
It's going to stop that.
Yeah. Oh, here you go. Fix it.
Yep. So, I mean, I really like the way you can kind of just move this, but without this changing, having the text, and you could click on words from the play, and it would link to the video maybe, or link to something related to that pop culture, moment.
So, so she is, you're using these layers of space and time to show that she is stuck in between, not a part of, whatever that hyphen. It's always, Irish American. She's, in that hyphen. That's a nothing in between this. She uses pop culture, so you're using pop culture, and you're going to put those on the timeline, her references to them as they, not the period they're depicting, but the period that they occurred. So the period that she would have encountered them.
Yes.
Is she using these things as more than time markers? I mean, what's the meaning of Abbott and Costello that might help us understand the goings on across the?
Well, she uses these. When we read the play, it's the present where she's already returned to Ireland, and so she gives us a lot of memories of her time working in New York. And she'll bring up like Abbott and Costello that she saw on TV during a certain moment in her memory. So a lot of times it's when she's confronted with a very traumatic or emotional moment in her life, something that happened in Ireland, she'll revert to these other memories of her time in America, instead of dealing with Ireland or the idea of Ireland or her father or her family. She just thinks about these other issues.
But she doesn't suggest that America is entirely, I don't know, or I don't know this project, but America is not entirely a soothing place.
No, she has to work hard.
Yeah, but I mean, and so and there are also tons of tensions and pain in these sort of nostalgic moments of pop culture as well. So are you considering two historical events in America that might? I
was thinking about that too, like World War II and those kind of events that were taking place, during those time periods.
I mean, I think even if she doesn't reference it, it seems like it's really important, because these pop culture moments are situated within a particular history, material culture, and economy, and capitalist system that perpetuates itself. That maybe where religion plays a huge role, but maybe a different kind of role than it does in Ireland, and the fact that she's a woman, and
Does it come up in the text? Like, are all references to America in the text pop culture?
For the most part, I mean, it's either working at the cafe and her boss that she is or is not sleeping with, and her pop culture references.
Because you can draw two separate conclusions from that. Either in the speaker or the character's head, American culture is just pop culture, or you can imply like this is the history with what you're saying by putting real events that shape the pop culture. You can get at a whole other story that wasn't told. Like,
but it also sort of depends on the purpose of, yeah, you're right. I mean, if
Yeah.
this is a deep dive into a character study, it does make sense what Brian's saying, that that if this is what she's saying and doing, but might she even be doing something more? I mean, they're probably more than escape. What else are they? So how should I love it. I think that I like the timelines.
I'm not sure if I should do like a timeline above and below for each culture. So like the text is sandwiched in between these two.
Well, I think for sure seeing the timelines in each country layered. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other information bits. I think thinking about how those would serve that conversation that we can see along those timelines through this character and her perspective. I think that's interesting.
Because I mean, as I was reading the play, I was looking at, okay, what was going on during this moment that she's talking about? And I was looking up like the emergency in World War II and how Ireland allowed the American troops to come over and, you know, use their ports as a stopping point before going on to Europe. And so even when I was reading through it, I wanted to look up these moments and kind of connect it to what's going on and how she fits in, or how, you know, the context of her world at that moment. So.
Okay.
But also, I know a lot of people during that time, they don't have access like, you know, we do of what's going on all around the world.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, who's next?
So I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna hold this up to the camera. This is the one that records, right?
Oh, I don't know. You guys see anything?
Can you see that picture, Bagley?
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't scan it and put it up because I have copyright concerns. But that is the map that I'm concerned with dealing with. And this is the project I want to steal. Similarly, the basis for this project I'm doing is the maps section. What I want to do in a nutshell, I'll be as succinct as humanly possible. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to take a journey in a novel based on the map provided in the book. And I'm going to trace the same journey in the video game adaptation of the story, and I'm going to try to overlay them. And the way that this is done in practice, this is from the Lord of the Rings project. I don't know what they used to do it, but if you see the blue line, this is the journey, and all these little dots along the way show you who was there, you know, what happened. It's Bilbo meets Gollum under the Misty Mountains, right? So if I could figure out what they used, or some sort of, I know at Prezi you can do a similar thing. You can click a bubble, and then that can show you who is on the journey, what characters are present in the book versus in the game, if there are people missing, if it goes in a different direction. There are a couple instances where it comes out of the metro, so that I'd have to draw myself because there is no provided map. But if I could figure out how to get Glukowski's map up in a way I can manipulate it, I can do what they did here for the Lord of the Rings project.
And remember, you don't have to build it. You just have to help us understand what it might look like and what it might do.
Yeah.
Do you see like a toggle kind of version where you click in a certain section and you could in one place see the source material, the book, and then another toggle back, and now you're looking at it through the game character or something like that?
Well, it would, on the map, if I could get the map in, it would be two different color lines.
Okay.
Right, because the journeys aren't the same. They don't go to the same places, and the same characters are not involved, but all the places in both sources are in the book. So the order is different, who's there is different, the whole ending is different. So it's going to have, and the writer of the book has a writing credit on the game. So this wasn't done without his permission, the same way like the differences between the Game of Thrones stuff and the books, The Song of Ice and Fire, like George R.R. Martin is involved in all of that. So you can't say this is what other people did with his stuff. This is what he's doing with his stuff, given the chance to do it again. So that's sort of where it's at. What else do I have to say? There are a couple of complications with it. There is an addendum to the book, which has been published as a standalone short story.
and there's been a reissue of the game. As far as I know, it's just been like quality of life improvements. But what I thought about that was, if you go to the main page, sort of the Lord of the Rings project, they talk about the family tree and what characters are considered canon and which characters are part of the larger universe, which I could represent that way.
Okay. Same color scheme.
Yes, that I used for the journeys, absolutely. Anything else I got to make sure I say? Trilogy. Oh yeah, I have to focus. I'm definitely building it based on the first game, because as a trilogy of novels, the middle book deals with different characters than the second game. So it splits in a way I can't represent unless I made the project literally just like my Cyberpunk project example I did, and just had like, this is a dump of information, which I don't think is as useful.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because the character, like the second game follows the character from the first game, and I know why, for continuity, right? It just makes more sense. But the second book deals with a different cast of characters entirely, so I can't follow their journey because they're different people.
Well, right, and I don't think you need to spend much time on that. You would just need to say this is the focus because of the split, and you know, maybe we can learn something from that. But yeah, interesting. So what do we dig about this?
The map idea in the metro, is that like the train stops?
Subway.
Subway.
Mm-hmm.
So would
it's a subway.
have like a subway map?
Yeah,
He's got one. Yeah,
this is in the book.
This is the inside cover of the book. Yeah.
So you said copyright concerns that you have.
That's why I didn't put it on my blog.
Put it up because all they'll say is take it down.
Okay.
So, because you're going to need it to do what you're wanting to do.
Well, yeah, for my project, but that's not a general URL that everybody could get.
I gotcha. Okay.
Like
okay.
This is a way everybody. I mean, I'll put it up
So
if
you
we
do
want to roll
what you feel
this.
comfortable.
He's Russian. He doesn't care. But he's got an American publisher who will care.
Yeah, maybe so.
For each stop, are you going to put like what they talked about there?
Events, yeah, because I mean, in a nutshell, like it's one of those stories where like he leaves to deliver a message. Next thing you know, he's involved with this fight against, if we want to do if we want to carry that Lord of the Rings example, against the orcs, right? He gets wrapped up in a sort of giant like end-all wars between these two, the monsters that were created on the surface by radiation. Humans live in metro tunnels because the world is over because of an atomic war. It's the only place they can live.
So the travel is happening on the metro, inside
In the tunnels.
metro,
In the tunnels,
okay.
yeah. And
They're not popping up. They're just
in the game you do in the first book, they see it through a botanical garden, so it cased in like a greenhouse, because it's not safe to be on the surface at this point in the lore, which has been carried on. I mean, past the games, there's a graphic novel. He only did one of them, but it was set in America, which is weird because this is obviously Russian, but the war they fought was with America, so it's like the other side. To include all that really kind of balloons this into a thing that in 3 weeks I probably couldn't finish.
No, I think less is more, because you're really looking at what we can see from the different, from the juxtaposition of the two different, what am I trying to come up with? Adaptation and the original source material. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is you don't have to, if you can just help us see it, we don't have to, you don't even have to know what tool this model, this Lord of the Rings thing does. But I do like the idea of having the characters be able to see the different characters too. Is the timeline important on the story? The story, it doesn't cover very much.
No, it's not a span of years. Yeah. It's a linear progression.
And is their path as straight as the Lord of the Rings?
No.
Because it can't be, because you got to go all
They get abducted at one point. It goes, so there's going to be a jump. Like the line wouldn't be continuous from point A to point B all the way through. There'd be by logic, there'd have to be a jump because the character doesn't quite know how they ended up where they were.
Is there anything about the story that we can complicate like with a physical overlay of what's actually going on in that space, so that stop is in an area that, I don't know, right next to the Berlin Wall or something. I don't really know.
Well, in this fiction, the stations are all controlled by. There's a Fourth Reich. All the and in the way Glukowski tells it, all the baser instincts in human behavior survived the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So when people separated into the little factions, they started to model after historical period based on the history of war.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking about Greg's project and that he's taking this fictional story and he's putting it in, real space. So this is the metro map that goes with his story. It doesn't exist, or is this a real metro map for?
I would have to if I could get a metro of Moscow and lay it over and see if it's the same thing.
Because if it is, that would be interesting, and if it's because if it is, and it's only slightly
Right.
changed, I mean, you'd have to account for the fact that the lines would change over time depending on whenever this.
Well,
was.
yeah, and then the key is about what's collapsed and what hasn't. That's
Because I can see that. No, I don't know anything about the history of Moscow, but I could see that there might be interesting layers of story if one could look at what's happening in real space and these.
I see what you're saying.
complicated
Okay.
time. And every node that has all these different places you can go to. There's something thematically that can be said about those choices or those lack of choices or those breakdown of those choices. The fact that this doesn't go anywhere anymore, I don't know.
Yeah, that's an easy question to answer, like in English, huh? Imagine that.
I think it's worth looking at. Looks like the red line's gotten a lot longer and they got extra other lines. But yeah, check into it and see if he had a.
That's the sort of thing. If I were Russian, I would just know. But as right.
Well, yeah, if you're Russian from
But
Moscow, who
I would
rides
just
the
know.
metro and rides it on all the lines because I imagine you did. Yeah. So okay, thank you, Brian. Excellent, interesting. Okay, who's next?
I'll go ahead.
All right, Jennifer.
So as far as the creation of anything that has a picture, that's it. That's what my Untitled site looks like so far. What I have in my blog is, so this whole dragon thing has become a really I was trying to set out to show that Beowulf's influenced other literature with the dragon in Beowulf, when in reality it's in the Bible. So, and I know that as Beowulf progressed throughout the ages, if it did, and biblical aspects got added to it, the dragon, there's a lot more even in the Bible about dragons than Beowulf. So now I've kind of flipped everything upside down, and it's become, Moretti has jumped in here to help me.
Gosh, that Moretti's got legs.
Yeah, he does. So the tree that I have thought is going to be most helpful for me is on page 78. I've grabbed some maps trees where, I'll just scoot down here, where also Rupika Rizam's book, New Digital Worlds, has a huge impact in me changing what I'm doing because, she's saying that we can't, just take everything like we're in a bubble with English literature and think that that's the only influence. Through all kinds of interwebbing throughout history, our stories have been shared or whatever, has gone on. So I can't really just take Beowulf and say that that's where every author got their dragon influences. So what I decided to do instead was take a tree-like thing, and this is totally new and not completely developed yet, and put the aspects of dragons, list them out. So there's the Bible dragon things, which of course I'm going to fix all this. There's some Beowulf dragon traits here comes Smog from Tolkien, and then I'll add a lot more, and then kind of join them together on those lines. And also, I don't know how to draw a vertical line, so you guys are going to just probably love my final project, since I don't even know how to draw a vertical line yet. But, of course, I'll figure it out. So just things like that Beowulf's dragon was slayed by a hero. So the dragon in the Bible is also pierced, as it says up there. Just different things. And then, I haven't even put this in my blog yet, but I've been thinking about the fact that dragons' traits over time mostly have become really less fierce and more playful, like Puff the Magic Dragon lives by the sea, and he frolics. And so there's not a lot of frolicking with the Bible dragon and down to Beowulf and everything. So then I thought maybe it may be too much, but kind of show maybe what's going on in the world at the time compared to how the dragons are acting, possibly. If not, if that has anything to do with it, I don't know. So these dragons have just kind of exploded on me, and there's so much.
Well, that's a good thing. A simple thing to suggest is, I don't know if you guys have suggestions too, but she's wanting to do this tree diagram, and one option might be Prezi. They have this pretty easy, I think, uses to. Do you guys have other suggestions for? I don't know, what is
If they're
ancestors use?
If it's a tree she wanted a model, there's Eastern and there's Western dragons.
Yes.
So they would follow two separate maybe lines, and then where they intermingle because
That's really interesting.
because the culture starts such a figure.
Ooh, can you organize it on the global North dragons, global South dragons?
Yes. Yeah, and then that way I could add a map, because I really wished that I could add a map at first, and I thought I couldn't because it would all be, right there. But now that I've already been looking around there at like a Mesopotamian dragon, which is, the very first anything of a dragon that's been drawn. It's just a drawing, but I could still add the traits of like, this looks like blah, 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 or whatever. But yeah, that's a great idea. And definitely, that I've already read about the differences of, which ones have wings, which ones, breathe fire or whatever, the fierceness and everything like that. So I think the cool thing about this is that I didn't envision at first, and now I'm seeing, is you can see kind of almost a display of man's interactivity with cultures, and possibly even a better description of history by looking at the way that people were writing their folklore. And I believe that there are elements of truth to this stuff too. How in the world did they all come up with the same story? What is this actually that they saw and did? So I don't know, I just think that that's how it's relevant, is that you can see more about history by seeing how this stuff was passed.
It has legs for sure. A couple of things. One is that's one of the joys of Digital Humanities projects, is when you set up this prototype, it's going to spark layers that you can't possibly capture, and so your job is not to capture, it's to start the spark, right? So you could make the argument about what a visualization tool like this might allow us to do, and show us a sample. So maybe for example, you just look at the publication date of Beowulf, and maybe you look at potential dragons that were happening in the years leading up to that, or something like that, all over the world, or snapshot Beowulf, snapshot Puff Magic Dragon. I don't know, but little sample data points that you can then do a tree diagram from. Not necessarily to find the origins. I don't know that that's even possible, really, but it's certainly not necessary. But you can help us understand the dynamic nature of dragons and the fact that really in human culture, it really doesn't come from any place in particular. As you say, these things are happening simultaneously. We don't really know exactly how these stories transfer. We do know something about them, but I love the fact, I love you bringing in post-colonial digital humanities to remind us that, yeah, dragons aren't our thing.
I like the idea of how this presents. You could use this to teach motif, which in high school, a lot of students have a difficult time picking up on that. But picking up the idea of the dragon in several different works, and then teaching them to look for motifs within a single work. I think this is a great project.
I like that. You said that's a very good idea. That particular element, this is, the dragon motif is what you're tracing. I like that. Anybody have a good title for it? You have a good title, don't you? What is it? Mapping Dragons, I think you said, right?
Let's see. Did I? Well, what? No, that was actually another blog I did before that. Dragons in literature.
Okay.
I thought about Imagine Dragons, but that's already taken.
No, do that. Do that.
Okay.
That would be really cool.
I think that's great because then you can also, reference it. And,
right. I know. I even thought about putting like how every website for a band has their tour dates or whatever. So I thought about adding a little funny section of like going on tour, Peter, Paul, and Mary with Puss.
Oh, fun! I dig that.
Okay.
All right, you got nods in here too. I think thumbs up.
Okay.
Anybody else have suggestions?
There's also a term like "Here be dragons" or "There be dragons."
From I
like
that.
pirate folklore.
That's good. Yeah.
There be dragons. That's nice. That's got a lot of layers.
After looking at everybody else's maps, I'm like sitting here going, why didn't I do Laura Ingalls Wilder's houses? Like something so simple and fun and American, and now I'm kind of
No,
we have to have dragons. I love the whole Beowulf thing. I love it.
Thank you.
Like you could leave Beowulf, Jennifer.
Right, I know. That's my homie. We've been hanging out all for a long time.
All right. Thank you so much. Good stuff. Okay, who's next?
I'm guessing that's me.
Abigail, all right.
I want to preface this by saying that I started out with one idea, and after seeing all these presentations, got something a little bit different, but still in the same vein. Okay, here we go. So I started out and I wanted to do something about Edgar Allan Poe because I love Edgar Allan Poe. And what I found was a few different digital humanities projects about his actual texts, but nothing about his detective fiction. And he's not really pointed out as somebody who created it, and he did. He created the whole detective fiction part, the genre. So I wanted to really highlight that, and I thought about doing something. I formatted it in a PowerPoint like a grant proposal.
Nice.
So I've got the basic questions for the first half done for concept, and then I thought about doing it like let's see, like my Roaring 20s digital humanities project that I had, where you ask questions and you answer questions that they give you, and if you don't answer them correctly, you have to either I don't have it. Okay. You have to either not work somewhere nice, like you have to be a seamstress, or you have to work in the kitchens or something, or you answer correctly and you move up and you become some like rich widow or something. And so I wanted something kind of like that. But this is an example of what they've already done with his books, and it's just his short stories. And they've done some really great artworks, and they've done movement with it. But after seeing everybody else's presentation, I thought about doing something like an episode thing, which is along the lines of a create your own adventure kind of thing. it's an interactive story where you make the decisions, and they already have some, but you can create your own if you sign up and make a profile for it. And you can do it on your phone or on your iPad or whatever. And I thought about doing something sort of meta, like you start out and you're hanging out with Poe while he's trying to write a detective story, and then you go into the story, and then you come back out when he's finished, and then that way you get the process of how he created it, and you get the idea that, yeah, he did start the detective fiction, but you also get the whole adventure, create your own decisions thing. So
What do you guys think of that?
I like anything that's like interactive like that, so that's cool.
Yeah,
I think it sounds pretty interesting.
agreed.
I mean, it's very bare bones right now, so.
It was a little hard to hear. So what medium are you going to use to make it interactive?
It's going to be something you can do either online or through an app. They have an app for your phone or iPad, and you can do that. So
I like the app through the phone idea. That is fascinating.
Yeah, love it. So what's your title? Do you have a title, working title?
right now, I kind of played on the whole creation thing and called it Father, Son, and the Detective Spirit, like Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. I know that's kind of reaching, but
No, but it also, I'm thinking of Moretti too, because he's got examples of his data that he's pulled specifically for detective genre too. So, not that you have to use it, but that can be part of your about. That, but the genre itself is important. But his connection to that is, and I think you'd also have to bring in a just one, I think, source that makes the argument that he's the origin story for detective genre, and then that's your hook. But now we gotta see how that goes. I love it. Nice. Okay. Anything else? I look forward to hearing about how that goes when you play with it, and also tell us in your about, I think, if that any sort of pitfalls that you maybe run into, shortcomings with that tool that you're going to talk about playing with, because this doesn't have to be. I don't know. Do you see maybe creating the first part of this story? For what would your prototype look like?
probably a few frames, just maybe like 3 different. It wouldn't be chapters, but 3 different scenes.
Okay.
I tried playing around with it just to play around with it once, and it's kind of difficult, at least for me, because I'm not a real big tech person, and you have to really like manipulate the sizes of stuff, and it's hard on a phone. So I think right now, before I even start, that would be an issue. It's just getting everything pieced where it looks halfway decent. But other than that.
Well, and this is for all of you guys. Those if you don't get there, that's fine too. Just to show us what you imagined, show us the limitations of the tool. Maybe we need a new tool, and so that could be one of the things that comes out of your project that you're designing. As long as you have a good argument for why you're making the tool that you are, why you're suggesting that the project that you are. Yeah, I like it. Thanks, Abigail. There we go. Okay, tell us about it. Oh, and I'll Vanna White.
Thanks. All right, so, my thought about this, I was coming at it from a couple of different perspectives. When I've read about, the different elements of mapping that come from digital humanities, it took me back to a thinker that I'd come across in college named Roland Barthes, who in post-structuralism got rid of the idea. He wrote a fairly well-known essay called The Death of the Author. And he said we should get away from the idea that an author creates meaning when he or she writes a text. Instead, he developed the term scriptor and said the person perhaps records the text, but then, when one person comes and reads the text, they bring a whole set of associations for interpretation. And then someone else comes and reads the text, and they have a different interpretation. But then you can come back to the same text after some time, months or years, and your experiences have changed the way that you view it. And my thought on this initially was to do a mapping of the way that different teachers approach The Handmaid's Tale, but I couldn't find a way to render it that didn't violate copyright laws, at least distributable. So I went back to one of my favorite Charles Dickens works that was manageable enough in the time frame that we're doing, and so I chose A Christmas Carol. And last week I showed a rendition of something smaller based on the yellow wallpaper, where I would put up a copy of the text with my own annotations and then open the commenting up to other teachers who could then put in their comments, their takes on different points in the story, their interpretation. Because one thing I've encountered, especially teaching in the school where I am now, is that I can come in with an idea of how a text works, but based on my cultural background, but a lot of times the students it takes a while to scaffold to that point. And that's one thing I liked about Greg's project. You kind of get that sense of geography. If you click on where it says blog there, and then you scroll down, you'll see that I've put together kind of a first draft of the about. I pulled some ideas from, I have 3 different digital humanities scholars in this draft, and I'm going to add some more. But the first question is, will people still pick up books in 50 years? Perhaps, but the idea that literature is moving to electronic is not something just to ponder, it's a reality. And then as a teacher, how can we put that to use in teaching skills for students to use? And so when we talked about this last week, if you scroll down and you click on that Google Doc, you'll see the kind of the draft that I showed last week. This is from the yellow wallpaper. It's just it's a placeholder document. When I come back with the project, this will have the text of A Christmas Carol with similar annotations. Now, if you look at the comments, all those are mine. Another element of this involves incorporating some research for people who teach A Christmas Carol through different cultural lenses. What do they find in the text that's meaningful, that's worth pointing out? And I've found two different cultural contexts. There will be 3 sets of comments in the margin on the final project. And obviously this won't happen by the end of the semester, but I plan to go public, leave this public and post it in different teaching communities. And the hope is that it will kind of take off as a tool that people can find and use as they're teaching. As far as what are the digital humanities roots of it, there's the sense of, I'm not planning a visual map, but looking as the project grows, the incorporation of different cultural, of teachers from different cultures in their presentation of the book, I think would deal with that. And the idea of moving from paper to electronics, I think that breaks down a barrier for publication, because that opens up the access that more people have to getting what they have to say out there for people to see. But there's I think, let's see which one. In the SARS article that I cite, there's a great deal that he has to say about when you move from literature and print to e-literature, the coming at it from a post-colonial perspective, the idea is that there's a more open access that there's not simply by moving from print to to what you can find what you can find electronically. That's where I am right now.
Okay. Okay. All right. There's one thing that I forgot that came to mind when you were presenting the yellow wallpaper, was the way that the debates in digital humanities is written, and his argument for why he makes it this way is specifically because to take advantage of the affordances of digital media to make it interactive. And also Jones talks a ton about how the publication world should change, not to, and remember that between page and screen pop-up, electronic pop-up book. So anyway, this is an interactive thing that I can't ever make it work, but there we go. So you can mark it 73 times if marked as interesting or added comments or something like that. And this marked text, where is the comment? Does it just count it or does it show us? I don't know how to make it work. But view social annotations. Well, hopefully, I know yours works better than this. But he makes an argument for why he's doing what he's doing, which might be useful, I think, to incorporate in your argument for why you're doing what you're doing. So what do we dig? What do you guys like? What's working?
I think it's a really cool tool that you could actually really easily implement into your classroom. So I think it's a usable project.
Yeah. Oops. And the tool is widely available, so you might not run into the trouble that I just ran into trying to show this.
And when this spreads out all over, and then people start talking about it in 5 years, we'll know where it came from.
We will.
Say, we were in that class.
We will. It's when it sparked a movement. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, Peter. All right.
Did anybody see any flaws or things that I'm not seeing as I'm putting it together? Any suggestions?
Well, so my recommendation would be to bring in Jones because of what he says about text, and to bring in something like Dave Bates in the digital humanities because of the annotation function. Didn't some of you guys play with the social annotation tool? What are some of the digital tools that you guys have run into that that allows you to mark up somebody else's text? Or
this reminds me of the feature I turned off on the Kindle. Is it will there'll be like a ghost underline, and it'll tell you how many people underline that section of the book you're reading, which is kind of what that does, but there's no comment feature. So you can, depending on when it was implemented, you can argue that this influenced that, or you could see if there's any, if you're still looking for sources, Peter, there might be people who have talked about, comment culture, or like the way comments sort of, since Kindle's been doing this for a while, I'm sure somebody's written something about it, whether or not it's on a blog or.
Does anybody remember anything like that in your various bibliographies, Zotero?
The project that I presented on last week was about where you could take text, or you could take a page, or you could do that. You could go through and have people's comments off on the side, and you can keep adding to that.
That's right.
It was pretty good. I think that might be useful for something. I don't know if he can interweave it into this, but maybe.
Thank you.
So yeah, I could take a look at how his experience was. Man, the ads they stick on these blogs.
What are you doing?
All right. I think that project has legs.
That was clearly an advertisement, not something I put in there.
No, I know. It keeps coming up on everybody's, and so I just, something gross was on Daniel's. Just because you guys are grown-ups, you look around it, I can't.
Yeah.
Let's see, what was I going to do? Oh yeah, peer review. So let's look at a couple, or at least Yeah. Not all of them will play. I just see, I'm talking to you in the future, yours is not playing, and Lonnie and Kendall, I can't open your project. So this is, oh, Stephanie Franklin, okay. And she's going to be able to hear your comments later. So, so let's see what she's up to.
Hi, everyone. I'm around 90% done with organizing and creating my final project. I'm putting the finishing touches on my introduction paper. I've completed a Photoshop mock-up of my site design, and I've started working with a Google site for the project's final presentation. I've posted a blog that contains an outline of my introduction, along with 2 sample paragraphs. For this screencast, I will briefly provide a sample of 3 slides of a PowerPoint presentation in which I've inserted some mock-up images of my project site. Before I get to that, I first want to introduce my project. My proposal envisions an online museum, one inspired by the collection of maps sourced within the Writer's Map, edited by Hugh Lewis-Jones. This book provides numerous literary maps alongside essays from writers and illustrators, discussing how map making is used in their work and whose work has inspired them. The book shows the merit in this exploration of creating and reading maps, which is why I propose curating literary maps based on fictional worlds and scouring through archives to discover what their makers had to say about their creations and their inspirations, and how all that, once digitized and made interactive, can lead a user into discovering a new dimension in reading. My proposed museum would lead into virtual interactive exhibits. These maps will include annotations and interactive tools to allow visitors to run various paths of each story. For example, Treasure Island will allow you to follow the path of its main narrative, or read annotations of its places and events, or simply take the traveled path of protagonist Jim Hawkins. The project will allow users to use a juxtapose tool to compare and contrast 2 maps, while reading source notes from authors about the inspiration and creation of their work. I hope to invigorate visitors with the realization of the potential literary space, to see firsthand how authors use their literary space and what that space means to us, the readers, as we navigate the narrative and character arcs. This is how I imagine my project website. The homepage will feature an exhibit hall-styled side panel, similar to the shortlist feature that is seen on the site Story Maps, which allows maps to be placed in small clickable images in an organized fashion. From there, a user can click on a map that could take them either directly to the page for interactive exploration, or they can select the map and then another to do a side-by-side comparison while reading author notes. The homepage features a toolbar for more direct linking, such as a page where all maps can be sorted alphabetically, by year, or by genre. Another tab links directly to the side-by-side comparison page, which makes use of the Juxtapose.js tool from NightLab. And another tab on the homepage links to a page where all author notes are compiled alphabetically by name. One of the main inspirations for my project is this interactive map from the Lord of the Rings project site. The tool I would use from this site is the map key, which allows users to pick and choose which narrative lines to follow. This is a mock-up of how a map such as Treasure Island can work once digitized and using the interactive legend from the Lord of the Rings project site. This page will also provide quick links to pop-up author notes or to take the user to the Juxtapose tool with another map. This is just a short sample of what I'm preparing for the final project. Once again, an outline has been posted on my blog site. All constructive criticism is welcomed. Thank you.
Okay, guys, would you use this?
Yes. Yes.
What? So, yeah, so why? What do we like about this? What do we think is useful?
The comparison option, because I personally would never have thought to put, Middle Earth and Narnia right next to each other, just to see what it would look, for no other reason than just to see what these things would look like. It's going to tell you something.
Yeah.
There might be commonalities across. By doing that, you might be able to draw conclusions about all sort of fantasy maps.
Yeah, I think so. And I didn't realize that you could select a path of different characters. I was thinking that might be a neat sort of feature in your project that, you can click and follow this character, and then I'm going to pull him off, and I'm just going to follow the video game guy or something like that.
It's the same character, they just go on a different...
Oh, but there's no other characters you'd want to...
There are,
but you're going to do just
when
one.
they leave the POV is still with the main character.
Okay.
So if they're not there, we don't know where they are.
Oh, okay, I see.
Talk to the main character. So
Okay.
anybody who's gone is effectively just off screen.
Well, that makes it a good video game then. Yeah. Do you guys have suggestions for Stephanie? Just keep on going on? Keep on, carry on? Good, okay. Good
Looks
stuff.
like she's got a pretty good start and a good grasp of what she wants to do. I think she just keeps plugging away, get it finished.
Agreed. Yeah, I think she's got a really good idea of why she wants to do what she's doing as well, and what role it's going to play, and she's communicating that well. So what I'd like for you guys to have next week is whatever the next phase of this is. So so I think in Greg, in your case, you know, I mean, what feedback did you receive today that you think that you might be able to make use of between now and next week? What are some of your takeaways?
Definitely, you know, looking at the layering of the map, and also I need to start putting together the narrative of my introduction, and I think that's probably what I'll hit next.
And okay, good. Yeah, I think that would be great. And you know, are you using any of the pros from Zane Grey? I mean, the pop-up includes pictures.
Yes, ma'am. I had thought that not necessarily the pros itself, but I think that's a good idea. I was going to suggest sifting through and finding some like samples of some audio, you know, like
oh, that's right,
books, and putting in there, or maybe possibly a movie clip of some sort. I'm still playing with it and trying to synthesize it a little bit on what would work best.
Okay, that's right. I'd forgotten about that. Okay, good. All right. How about?
So we have next week. So we're going to have scheduled times to.
Yeah. What I've done is I created a doodle poll that I've not actually put times on. So I'll finish that. They're going to be 15-minute windows, and they'll be on Tuesday and Thursday, starting in the late afternoon. So whatever, you know, pick a, I don't know if you guys, doodle poll, basically, I'll select everything that I have available, and then you guys will select what you have available as it lines up with what I have available, and then I'll set the schedule up from that. It just, so it's only, and
so if we couldn't make Thursday, the Tuesday thing, I could do that instead. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll be in this room on Thursday night, and we can record via Zoom. That thank you, Ray. The way we normally do. But you can also meet in any of these other times, and we can do it via Zoom if you want, or we can do it by phone, or you guys can come in, whatever works for you. So there'll be several other possibilities, because I know others can't be here at all during this time. What about you, Jennifer? What's next? What's your takeaway?
Next is definitely doing what you said and going to the Prezi and trying to draw a vertical line. I'm just kidding, but
no, it's I
you know, seeing what is available, and I'll probably make my husband help me, because I don't know why I'm so afraid of technology. It's just
I too.
Who drew that map? Like, where are y'all getting this stuff? I'm going, what? So
what did you suggest for her drawing her trees?
If she wanted to do a tree that like there'd be two main branches for the eastern and western.
Oh, that's right. You weren't talking about the tool. You're talking about conceptually.
Those lines don't have to be vertical.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And here's another, here's a question I'll ask everyone. So like I said, Mesopotamia, you know, there's this old drawing of a dragon that keeps popping up when I'm looking at stuff. That's not really the east or the west. I mean, what would you guys call Mesopotamia? It's like the center of everything.
That could be the point that the two the two lines come out of.
Right. That would be their connecting point, I guess.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Now you got
Because we
space.
don't have to be accurate about like history and like anthropology and stuff. If you want to just
Right.
make that dot and have both your lines come out of it,
It's
and
conceptual.
just label it right
Okay.
Mesopotamia.
That's where I get hung up, is like the whole doing everything right, and like, where did I get this picture? I just stole it, and stuff that I would never let my class get away with, kind of like, oh, now I'm just, so I've got to like let go of that, I think, and just move around with it. Even,
You do.
Googling the dragons I've Googled, like, oh no, I just took this from Wikipedia. That's not legit. Now I've got to go find it again. It's going to take forever if I really try to do it right, I mean, does that make sense?
It does, and here's my advice on that. When you're creating, you can't be messing with all the little tiny details. I mean, one thing that you can do is put a Zotero plugin on your browser and just click that bad boy whenever you steal something. I mean borrow
Right,
something.
right.
Get inspired by something.
Inspired. I like to collect.
Because tracing the sources of stuff that you find on the internet is maddening, because nobody gives any sort of citation, but often Wikipedia does. I mean, I always go refer to that Nature article. There's an accuracy, and they do chase their citations. So maybe the image will be cited.
Yes.
And don't worry about doing everything right. Don't worry about. You got to care a little bit about it, but the line for copyright and fair use is complicated. This is fair use. You're basically, if these things are still commercially viable, you're selling more copies by doing stuff that supplements the projects that we're talking about. I don't know, we're selling more dragons. What I want you guys to get out of this is not an obsession about the minutia, but these big ideas. And also, it's really important for you to that you don't have to you have to be able to visualize what this tool or this prototype can do, what it might look like, why it might matter, what other kinds of tools might inform it, or projects might inform it, what it might do that other things are not doing, and show us a prototype is just this is sort of what it would look like. I mean, what you guys have done already. So Mesopotamia and some lines, going out, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 layers, and just to give us a taste of what it looks like. Then you contextualize that by showing us, okay, so if this were to continue, then blah, 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 blah. And what I visualize would be, is it going to be crowdsourced? Are there people going to add their own dragons to it? Or is this something that would be populated entirely by the creator and maybe over multiple phases? Because, you don't want a random, you don't want people to create maybe you do, a tree towards Imagine Dragon. Or where does that go from Peter, Paul, and Mary?
My son would love to help with that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Family project. And Abigail, you good?
I think I've got a good start to it.
Good. I look forward to seeing how that tool goes. And you guys, Tamara and Katie?
We're going to work
You better take a breath.
I don't know how you're going to finish by the time.
Oh, I think I think that in the classroom.
I said you guys gonna take a little breath.
I think we're going to work on making connections, like clarifying the connections between the different pieces, and like answering the why. Like how is this different from regular media, or like from regular humanities? Like, why are we doing this digitally? What's the difference, and things like that.
Well, it was someone who was in the classroom said, like, why the Janes? Like, what is it the literature is trying to show us? And so we're going to look for that piece too.
Yep. Excellent. And I think in the about section, just also just articulating the role of just the word, the name Jane in society is and how that ties to your project. And also, I wish I could remember the name of the podcast, but anyway, the history of paper dolls is really interesting. So if that type of artifact that plays a role beyond just a visualization tool, I don't know, is there something about the generic Jane that you're dressing and redressing over time and through different writers? Is that paper doll phenomenon, can it be overlain with that idea of this generic Jane that's also non-generic Jane? I don't know, what kind of feminist message is there, and 100 other questions that I don't have any idea how to answer, even if they're worth pursuing. But, and how about you guys? Good? Okay.
I just get so, right, the book I'm using it's a science fiction book, thus it's all fiction. Honestly, the copyright concern, he probably just took the metros on this.
He probably did.
Never crossed my mind, never for a second.
No, I know, you guys are such good, so respectful of these materials, you're like.
Of course that's what, of course.
Well.
For a second, did I think that?
Well, I love the idea of juxtaposing physical and fictional, and a lot of interesting stuff going on. And presentations will be in a couple of weeks. I want to talk to you guys, but there's no more time together between now and presentation. So do we?
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
Okay.
So week 15. Are you impressed with one another? Yeah? Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to what these are going to do. There's just a really interesting broad range and interests and representations and layers of complexity. One of the things that you'll be talking to me about will be a little bit more about the why and the argument for how these parts fit together, why it matters. I look forward to working with you guys one-on-one. It's optional. I look forward to following how the project evolves. See how far you can get between now and next week. And if you want me again the following week, please feel free to do that. I love to talk about these things. And but otherwise, just use the time to work on your projects. Thank you, guys. See you in a couple weeks.